Y'all are good to go.
Thank you.
Very good. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the work session of the Orange County Board of Supervisors to order. Our first presentation is going to be the Workforce Center discussion. Dave Kilgore, Operation Manager, and Marty Bywater Baldwin of the workforce, career workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was going to say, Mr. Voorhees, is one of the
So this is in follow-up to a previous work session where the board had some additional data that was requested, and my understanding is that data has been prepared and that Supervisor Frame, who is our liaison member to the Virginia Career Workforce Development Board, has had some conversation about that with staff, and so we're here to kind of review that and ask any other follow-up questions. The anticipated outcome, should the board be comfortable with where everything is that we have a contract renewal scheduled on the regular agenda. So.
good. All right. Yeah.
Marty, want to start through the presentation?
Great. Well, thanks for having us. And so we had some specific questions from the board that we prepared responses to. So thanks for those questions. First question was about where we stand on unemployment data. And so similar trend as when we met before. Orange County is on track with Virginia, a little better than Virginia as far as unemployment numbers, and a full percentage point better than the national average. So there's the data from the Virginia Employment Commission there. Constituent served, so there's a question about what specific zip code folks that are accessing the Orange Workforce Center were coming from. And so we've got two charts for you here. The first one is for the Widener-Pizer program. So these are people that are doing job search, we're receiving unemployment benefits and access to services through the Virginia Career Work Center here in Orange. So you can see the breakdown by zip code for folks that were doing job search through the center there. The 22960 being the leading one, followed by Locust Grove and Unionville. And then the second graph with the red bars is breakdown by zip code of job seekers served. And these are folks that have enrolled in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act program. So this is the Department of Labor program that has funding available to pay for tuition and training for folks. More intensive program. Usually folks are involved for about 18 months until they get a credential and get a job. And you can see through the Orange office the breakdown by zip code of where folks that enrolled in that program came from.
Marty, can we give a little definition of Widener-Pizer? So Widener-Pizer is a program that covers anybody that's unemployed. It's normally run by the Virginia Employment Commission. It was turned over to Virginia Career Works near the start of the pandemic just because of the number of unemployment claims VEC was processing. So we took that program over, we administered it for them. It's reverting back to VEC on July 1. So we gave you both pieces of data. A lot of our traffic in the centers over the last year has been related to unemployment and unemployment issues or unemployment claims. They typically will then funnel into job seeker assistance. In some cases, though, people weren't quite ready for that. So that's why we broke it out into two pieces. We would normally be presenting the WIOA participants because that's typically what Virginia Career Works handles.
The next question from the board was regarding funding streams for the Orange Workforce Center. Yes.
Just a question. I'd like to get your perspective on it. It looks like, based on the first graph there, you show 800 plus people that are unemployed. And from the chart that you were just talking about, you're seeing somewhere between 1 in 20 and 1 in 40 of those 800. Is that about what you would expect? Is it, I would have hoped that maybe the number was a little higher, but do you have any comments about that sort of either 1 in 40 or 1 in 20 kind of a relationship?
So the majority of people that are unemployed have been unemployed before or found jobs on their own before. So they're not looking for support.
Okay.
Everyone who's unemployed is offered support. whether through VEC or through our programs at Virginia Career Works, we want to help those people find gainful employment going forward. But they have to choose to accept that.
Right.
We typically expect to see less than 5% of the people that are unemployed or that are on unemployment insurance come through our system and ask for help or ask for assistance that we provide. So it's pretty typical. I think it's a little inflated this time because I think the fear of COVID has kept some people on the sidelines that normally may want that support, but it's not unusual to see a number of 5% or below.
Okay, all right.
And that's a great question. We've got a slide about the demographics too, so you can see with that percentage that are accessing services.
They look more like me than not. I'm beginning to understand the problem.
So the board asked a question about funding streams for the center, and through the external entity funding request, the county has historically funded the one part-time staff person, the resource room specialist, and a few office supplies at $20,000 a year. That funding is then matched by the rest of the 6-person team through Virginia Career Works and Goodwill. That staffs, that meets with clients in the Orange Workforce Center, that operates the WIA programs, that does career counseling, does career assessments. So the rest of the team is supported by in-kind funding from Virginia Career Works and Goodwill. And that number is a little over $57,000 in salaries and support. And then the Department of Labor WIA federal funding that pays directly to Orange County residents, or pays for Orange County residents for their tuition and training providers, that is over $15,000 a year. So proportionally, Orange County's contribution is 22% of the operations of the 3-day-a-week Orange workforce. So here's the one about the demographics. So you can see here the breakdown, and these were in-person visitors this year from July until May. And you can see the age proportion, 54% were Orange residents that were 55 years old or older, which I mean, we think is great, because that means that maybe these are individuals that might need some support on the technology side. Maybe we're working at the same job for a long time, and the world of job search and work has completely been upended. Maybe haven't created a LinkedIn profile and done online applications and attachments and all that process. So that's what we're there for, is to assist folks that are needed. And then the other group, the next group is 45 to 54-year-old, which is prime working age. We also see some young people come through the center, and also people that are new to the community that need to get their bearings. Who are the employers in the community? Who's hiring? Who do I need to talk to? Those are the folks that we're seeing. With that older age group, a lot of those individuals, a lot of those job seekers are looking for part-time work in either their office or retail. So sometimes there is a mismatch there of the businesses that are hiring and the types of jobs.
Like a second job.
Like second job, yeah, supplemental income.
Retirement job even.
Retirement, yeah.
I think it's fair to say as well that a lot of our services are virtual now. I think it's probably fair also to say that some of the younger population are more comfortable in that environment. So it isn't that they're not being served, it's that they're probably using a different method of being served than the demographics that you're seeing that are coming into in-person or in-person support.
So training, the board asks questions, break down what specific credentials. Last presentation we had broken down by industry, but here you can see in the chart the specific credentials that Orange County residents are receiving training, and the WIOA funds are able to pay for that, as well as the cost breakdown of those trainings. Healthcare is the leading credential that is Orange residents are choosing. So, and usually the progression is the personal care aide, which is a 2-week course, the certified nursing assistant, which is about a 2-month course, and then you can add on to that stackable credential for the medication aide. Some people go the clinical medical assistant route. So those are entry-level credentials to get into the healthcare field. Again, the target industries for Virginia Career Works Piedmont region historically have been healthcare, IT, manufacturing, business, financial. We're adding food and beverage manufacturing, light manufacturing to that list, but these training credentials are in line with those target industries.
Now, you have the ability to fund through the programs for things like heating and air conditioning, electricians, plumbing. All those are programs that people could get into with WIOA funding.
Right, skilled trades.
So we've seen a lot of interest in welding lately, in particular. A little different than we would have expected, but we certainly support the trade as part of.
I think all farmers need to know how to weld, don't they?
Better.
That's where I go when I need help.
Yeah, that's right. How'd that work out?
So we wanted to give a couple of examples of what this looks like in practice, of what having this access point at Orange Workforce Center means for businesses and job seekers in the community. So one of the things that I do is I lead the business service team meeting every month of different workforce partners. So there's representatives from Germana, from the school system, from economic development, from the Department of Aging and Rehab Services, and from other workforce agencies. We get together, talk about what businesses need in the area, and both plan job fairs and create strategic responses to what those employer needs are. So one things that we did April 30th was to have an outdoor job fair at Booster Park. We had 16 businesses attended from Orange, and we had 47 job seekers attend. And out of those, we've already got 9 reported hires from that event, of those 47 folks that attended. It was a cooperative event. We worked together with Germana, with Orange County High School, and with our Virginia Career Works staff to put on this event to make it accessible and open to both students and to adults. And the businesses said they appreciate that as well. Some of them had summer jobs or internships for high school students, but a lot of them were also interested in talking to the adults as well. We had parents come and bring their kids to the event. So that was a good collaborative event that happened recently, and we've got listed there on the slide the businesses that attended. We tried to have a mix between manufacturing and retail, as well as some agriculture companies that attended. Another example is kind of talking through when we work with an individual, and this is specifically from the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act program. It is usually about an 18-month commitment between our staff and the person who's looking to get training and a job. So I want to tell you this story of a young lady, we'll call her Amelia, that we met while she was a senior at Orange County High School. This started the beginning of 2020, pre-pandemic, and actually we had Orange County Business Green Applications reach out to us and ask for us to create some sort of innovative project to connect high school students with the manufacturing field. Actually, this guy here, this is where I met him, because he was the president for a long time at Green Applications and over 20 years experience in manufacturing. And he said, hey, let's do something out of the box. If we wanted to just fill positions right away, there's staffing companies to do that, but let's think of something that really engages the community and exposes some people to jobs in manufacturing that might not normally have that. So we got together with Orange County High School, with the Department of Rehab Services and Germana, because Germana has an on-site career counselor, and devised this program. We call it the Pipeline Project. And for 8 weeks, we met with 4 students from Orange County High School. They're all special education students. And we did resume writing, interview preparation, did a little bit of labor market information about what manufacturing looks like, what kind of career progress is available in manufacturing, and what Green Applications FM Expression will be looking for in potential employees. The great partnership was that the FM Expression said, if you do the 8 weeks of training, we'll pay for 8-week internship at our company, and the school system contributes transportation and flexibility in scheduling to get the students there. So Amelia started on that program, got enrolled in the WIOA program, did the work readiness, started the internship at Green Applications. and was really doing well. And the guarantee is successful completion of the internship would be a full-time job offer upon completion. And then COVID hit, and things shut down, and she wasn't able to complete the rest of that process in that manufacturing environment. But our staff from Virginia Career Works was still committed to working with Amelia. And so our staff member, Sarah and Amelia, met and did some assessments and said, all right, this is closed down now. What else are you interested in? What are your strengths? And through doing some career assessments, it turned out she was interested in hospitality and in food service. And so Sarah was able to line up an internship where through the WIO grant, we were able to pay for a short-term internship at Woodbury Forest, working in the dining facility. So she got some experience. When she completed that, she graduated to an internship at the Gray's Steakhouse, which Amelia was able to complete and just got an offer a few weeks ago for full-time employment there in Locust Grove.
They just had a ribbon cutting, and I was up there and talked to the owner about that. He was very pleased with her.
Great.
And her steaks were great. And that was a 17-month process. And so that we are into the medium-term commitment of working to help get folks ready for jobs, and maybe folks looking at jobs and careers that they wouldn't consider but need some training to get to.
This would have been more challenging because of special needs.
In the middle of a pandemic,
Yeah.
in hospitality. Yeah. So those two examples for kind of what on the ground having the Virginia Career Works Orange County Center looks like for your businesses and job seekers. And then we asked and got some business references, and these 5 individuals so they would be more than happy to answer any questions that the board has as far as our interactions and efforts in recruitment, retention, and helping them fill their pipeline of good local employees from Ethnic Expressions, from Zama, Orange Pharmacy, your Gordonsville Pharmacy, JB Cakes, and Dogwood Village, all companies we've worked with.
And 2 of those companies are represented on our board now. So it's a pretty good commitment.
Any questions, comments? Thank you very much.
This was something that we had a previous supervisor who was assigned to that council. And used to tell me, go down there, and there was nothing going on, so he never went to the meetings. So I got sucked into it. And they do a lot of good work down there. We've now, Jack Ricketts has got on their development board, which I think, given that he had some issues with it and some ideas about it, I suspect that'll be a challenge on both sides. But anyway.
Very good. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Our next item is space study, scope of work. Mr. Hildebrand. Great insight.
Here. Okay. Thank you, members of the board. Hopefully you had a chance to look at the PowerPoint presentation. I wasn't really planning to go through that slide by slide, but I can if you'd like. But the main purpose of today, so that we can get this thing on the street, is to get some clarity between the board and staff on a couple of things. Which facilities that we are going to include in this endeavor, and which ones we're not, or perhaps we're going to do all of them, but we had that conversation. And secondly, wanted to have a discussion about which county departments would be included and which would not. And honestly, before we go through this PowerPoint, give them a little more time to think about this presentation today. I'd like to hand out, I made a list of all the county departments. And I thought if each one of you had this to look at, it would help us in our discussion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I should have thought about it, but when I said that, Tom, do I want to? You're on it, so I guess you should. Mhm. I'm sure you know them, but. So looking at the PowerPoint presentation, we talked about proposed goals, and in essence, the way this is presented is that it would be a three-phase project. And primarily what we're talking about today is phase one. And phase one is the data gathering portion of the study. And what we want to try to accomplish with the phase one data is to eventually develop 5, 10, and 20-year projections on what space needs the county will have. And then find a way to accommodate those needs.
20 years, huh?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I will share. I've been through one of these before. When I worked for Powhatan County, and actually I was pretty much fresh off of the phase one part of that space study when I came to work here in Orange. I'll tell you, it's painful. It's tough, and it took phase one in Powhatan took about a year to accomplish. And the tough part about it is sitting down with folks and really talking through and making everyone think about what things might look like 10 and 20 years from now. It's not an easy thing to do, but at the end of the day, it's valuable information.
Kurt, somebody said 20 years, and I had I think a similar reaction. I was, should we not focus on something a little bit shorter term than 20? I mean, I guess it's okay to talk about
We said
20
5 or 10 to 20.
Well,
I know, but you know, it seems to me that there's a real focus, you know, for the next year or two, and then maybe something beyond that. That it just seems like that would give us more actionable information. So
and I think it will, just like, because when we're looking at our immediate needs and then our midterm and long term, the concentration will inevitably fall to what we need kind of tomorrow, you know, for now. So when we get to the second phase of the study, which is the design of the master plan of how we achieve space, the first thing that we will focus on is what do we do right now to accommodate needs, but we do it in a way such that the efforts that you make to accommodate your short-term needs is not wasted when we start looking at mid and long-term.
And I understand if there's an organization that has a certain trajectory, and let's call it a growth trajectory for the moment, that should be part of the consideration. But I wouldn't want to waste a lot of time defining whether that growth trajectory is, you know, 22% or 18.5%. You know, acknowledging that there's a trajectory is probably appropriate and useful. But a lot of time and energy spent, you know, worrying the details of that 10-year out or whatever it happens to be, seems to me to be better used if we refine what we know about the next, you know, few years.
Understood.
That's my only point, is that there's a point of emphasis that we need to make sure is appropriately placed.
Yes, sir.
One thing, I think before we even go any further into the discussion, unless I'm mistaken, we have 7 entities that we can actually take off the list or even look into consideration.
Yeah, I was going
Yeah,
to get to that.
I was gonna say 2 of them, at least, I would say for the 5-year, are economic development and tourism, I believe, since we just put them in new space. It appears that that is good, and then everything that's going to the future building out near Booster Park.
So if it's okay with the board, I mean, we can just move into that discussion if we like. If that's
I'd
appropriate.
like to, that way we can
Okay.
actually
So,
dispense with some of it.
so on the list of county departments, and kind of in line with what Mr. Crozier's talking about. So a couple things I wanted to say about this list. When I first proposed to put a space study in the CIP, it was shortly after I came here, so that was, I think, first time it was in the CIP was in 2008. And I will say that the number that we put in the CIP, we've tweaked it a little bit since then, but it was based on pretty fresh information and knowledge that I had from Powhatan. And it was also based on a few things that were true in 2008 that might not be now. So I think part of the reason for that's good for us to go through this list. And I'll give you an example. It's kind of a facility question and it's a staff question, and that's the courthouse. So when I came in here in 2007, the courthouse was pretty much brand new. And so when I initially submitted the space study, I didn't think that it was necessary, one, to assess the courthouse because it was brand new. And secondly, my assumption was it would accommodate their needs for space for a good while. So back then, wasn't even part of the scope. Does it need to be now? I personally still don't think so, but that's part of what we need to talk about today. So if you go down, if we go through the county departments first, I think the obvious ones, administration would be included. The airport would not be included because it's a special separate entity. The animal shelter would not be included because again, that's a special function. And secondly, there's already money right now in the CIP to do a separate assessment of that facility. Building and development services would be included in my opinion. Building inspections, commissioner revenue, communications, county attorney.
Okay. Can we just back up for a second? Communications shouldn't be, unless we're not moving into that new building for another 5 years.
Well, communications is different because I think you're equating it with maybe IT.
What type of communication?
So communications is defined on our website. And Ted, I don't know, maybe you could
Yeah,
possibly.
this is more corporate communications,
Yes,
internal
sir.
stuff, our social media, web, and all that sort of stuff.
So this
As
is-
opposed
this
to
is-
emergency 911,
Which would really fall under admin.
administration, it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a function of admin, but they are listed as separate departments on our website. Court services, so now we're getting into the courthouse. So I've just drawn a question mark on that one, and I wanted to have that discussion with you folks today. And Aaron could possibly weigh in on this as well, and he's more familiar with the day-to-day uses of our facilities, but I'm still not sure. I don't necessarily think the building needs to be part of the assessment. You can.
Yeah, I would say from a facility standpoint, it would need to be, evaluated. But it would be worth having conversations with the departments within the courthouse. Because we don't really, they tend to be separate, so we really don't usually have an idea what they're planning until they come and spring it on us. So it's worth having conversations with them.
So you think we should include?
Yeah,
And-
what I'd
and-
like to do is
so-
just get rid of the ones we're not going to include in anything first.
Okay,
Let's just get them off the list here.
so, okay,
Anything
Okay.
going to the new building by the airport.
so that would include the emergency communication center, we don't need to include them.
Right.
Fire and EMS, we don't need to include them, but we need to have a discussion a little more about that. We don't need to include the landfill solid waste. We don't need to include the sheriff's office,
IT,
and we do not need to include IT. And the reason for that is fairly obvious, but all those departments were analyzed for space needs as part of the design of the new public safety.
and then tourism and economic development.
So I have an opinion about that, if I may share. So as a department, I think it's worthwhile to have a conversation with them to talk about mid and long-term, what their thoughts are on space. But as far as the space they're in, I don't necessarily think it's necessary to waste time or money because those are facilities that we just recently renovated. That
Yes.
makes sense? Okay. So then the only questions I really have as far as county departments and whether we include them or not. First of all, let me try to get a little clarification. On court services, that's pretty much everybody that works in the courthouse right now. And I would assume if we're going to interview parts of those, or parts of the people in there, we need to do them all. And we're talking about circuit court, talking about general court, talking talking to the judges and
Clerks.
clerk.
Deputies.
Again, yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah, again, I will share that that wasn't part of the scope way back when, and it may skew the cost of phase one. I don't, until we get those proposals in.
There's one other that's not in here that we've not made any decisions, but reassessments.
I did make mention in the PowerPoint that as part of this, and it will probably fall a lot more under, when we have discussions with Ted, we need to think about what departments may come into existence later that we don't even have right now, so we will have those discussions. Okay, so that covers everything that's listed as county departments on the website. And again, we will also talk about potential for departments that may.
Go again, why you didn't consider the animal shelter?
One, it's kind of a special facility in and of itself, and secondly, we have a separate CIP item in the CIP now to look at that building and staff separately from this.
So it doesn't need to be in this study, but we're still basically studying it as a
Yes.
separate item.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that brings up a good point, Mr. Frame. It kind of takes me back to fire and EMS. So my thoughts were, we wouldn't evaluate their current facilities, nor would we talk to them about their space needs, because again, they're a very specialized group. And my opinion is that if there's going to be a study for those folks, it needs to be separate in and of itself. And they use different data for figuring out locations or where they need to be and all that kind of stuff.
And under our current model, it could be totally different in 5 years than the model that we currently have.
Understood.
And now you've got a lot of volunteer organization-owned buildings.
Well, basically right now, even though it is County of Orange Fire and EMS, it's County of Orange EMS service for the most part. Yep. And those facilities are going to stay limited for a while.
Right.
So,
Can I ask a thought on the Berry Hill facility? I think there's some interest in kind of finishing that upfit project. So we really don't need to assess the space needs of the leadership team of Fire and EMS, because we're moving them into the new building, and it's got room for expansion, so even the future is good, and that building doesn't need to be assessed. And I'm hearing what everyone's saying about their stationing, who knows where that goes. But we do have folks in that one building, the Berry Hill building, and it is sort of half
Was
up
that
in.
not budgeted?
Well, so it's got some money in the CIP, but maybe not finished. So that, to me, that's the one building in that group that might need some thinking about how to finish it out.
Right. Is I know for health and wellness, is that the main area of the building you're talking about, or?
Yeah, there's sort of, the bays are probably okay, but they need the ventilation piece. The kitchen, I think, was taken out of service, so are we gonna put it back? I guess admin area on the south side looks like it's ready to occupy, but no one's in it. It's just some missing pieces to that. And I think they've done a good job of making the front ADA compatible. They put in a new porch and ramps, but there might be some features inside that need to be tweaked to gain compliance. So that's the one building that I feel like maybe we ought to look at, not comprehensively the whole fire and EMS department, but just that building.
So I did have that I have that facility listed with a question mark as to whether we include it on the assessment. Do you have anything to share? I know you've been more involved in whatever the future projects they have identified. Have you been involved much with that?
Just for that, the Berry Hill Station,
Yeah.
I did have conversations with Wiley Wilson about what it would cost budget-wise to put that project, kind of take it to completion with all the ventilation system. I can't call that figure offhand, but we did do some preliminary work just to see what that would take.
That definitely needs to be included in it.
The big components were the ventilation system for the bays and then the separate ventilation room for the turnout gear.
Turnout gear.
The real healthy, or the health
Right.
aspects of that.
You say you went through this in Powhatan.
Yes, sir.
That was your first experience.
With a comprehensive space study.
How did that work out? What was there to learn from that?
Well, and part of the reason that I requested to put it in the CIP when I first came here is, and Powhatan was very similar. They had a multitude of inventory of different ages and different conditions. And part of the benefit of this phase one piece of the space study is we would have each one of those buildings assessed, structural, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, all that's looked at. And part of the benefit, I will say selfishly, part of the benefit of that is it aids Public Works in developing budgets for future maintenance, and put things more on cycle, even though I'll say between 2008 and now, I think we have a lot better handle on what these buildings need, but we haven't looked at them, extensively from a structural standpoint. So having said all that, it helps Public Works in developing budgets and providing better maintenance. But it also provides a basis for phase two of, all right, how do we accommodate the space needs? So we've identified certain departments need more space and it's got to expand, and you may have an old building that's just not worth the effort of putting the money in it to make it accommodate what you need. So the assessment plays into the master planning of future space. Does that make sense?
Well, I guess it does, but I guess the question I have, how much of this do we actually need an architect and engineer for? And how much maybe can we do in-house? We've got pretty smart people working together.
Well, I'll just say this as honestly as I can say it. We do have smart people, but we don't have many of them. And we've been pretty buried. I mean, that's just the truth. I don't know. So my answer is, we need them because staff we don't have.
There's one other thing to add to that, and
I mean,
we went through this with the front half of the Berry Hill Station. And I was beyond livid, but in order to comply with state and federal standards, unfortunately, we have to deal with these companies and do it in that manner. I think everybody but Ted was here and can attest to the fact that we could have done what was a $120,000 project, could have been done for $40,000, but you can't do that. Is that the best way to put it, Jim? Is that a?
There were regulatory overruns, I call it.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, it's, government is very frustrating.
So I understand that, but a lot of improving your efficiency, whether it be rearranging the furniture or knocking down walls, to what extent, I'm not sure, you know, but there's commercial companies out here that can help with that. I'm just a little bit concerned that, you know, you can spend a lot of money doing a study and then at the end of it, find out you can't afford it.
Well, it
Like
does pave a roadmap for the future
I
though.
understand.
And that's probably, to me, the most important thing is it is worth making the investment to find out what is worth saving out of the apple cart and what is just throw it out. To me, that's the,
Well, but that's really kind of a different thing. I mean, that's really that's a facilities.
right, it's one part of it. And that, I guess that's part of my question is, they're tied together.
I mean, we went through the process and the county built the public service building out there.
Right.
We didn't have anybody, you know, we didn't have a big study. We just had an architect and they designed it. We went through a process here. I don't think there was any specific professional engaged to go through that.
there was, we did a space
Early on,
study,
there was.
we did a space study before it's designed. It was done by Wally Wilson, but it wasn't study done.
Right, but it's a space study of those specific
Correct,
entities.
correct.
Yeah.
And all we're talking about
But
now is.
we knew we had a problem, so we said, okay, we need somebody, that's to me, maybe I'm ignorant, but that's a totally different thing. I mean, you say we've got, in that case, we had 5 departments that we knew we had problems with. And so we hired somebody to specifically look at what kind of building do we need? We want to take care of the space needs of these 5 entities.
So they all fit together in one category of public safety.
What you're talking about, what I understand you're talking about here is kind of an overall, you know, how much space is the county going to need?
Yes,
And I'm not sure,
excluding the departments that you just mentioned. because
I'm not
of
sure
our
why
building.
to me, it would make more sense to do this as we go along. We know we have a problem. Let's hire a professional to help us fix each problem individually instead of trying to fix everything at one time. Because I think by the time we get back around to actually getting that done, it's going to be outdated.
Well, that's why I asked about 20 years.
I think I'm headed somewhat in the same direction Margaret is talking about here. When I first saw the list of buildings that we own, I identified 3 in particular. The Community Development Building, Gordon Building, and the Sedgwick Building, that are sort of main significant buildings that we're using now. And I wondered, is the right immediate question to be asking, how do we best utilize those 3 buildings? Either what are the deficiencies or problems with them, or what can be done to best utilize those. Some of the others, and the airport terminal is one that probably doesn't need to be
Correct.
looked at very carefully, and you
Correct.
acknowledge that.
Sure.
As well as the old clerk's office. But then you've got some libraries in there and other kind of things that seem to me to be sort of beyond the scope a little bit of understanding the immediate need. I mean, I would like to have some thought given to taking those three main buildings, at least as the starting point, and say, okay, we got them, we own them. What's good about them, what needs attention about them, and given our knowledge of our staff needs, adding in the new public safety building in the mix, how do we get the most out of those three buildings, I guess is one way of describing it. I mean, I'd like to have a little bit of thought given with that. I'm less concerned about longer term, as I said before, and I think places like libraries and maybe Berry Hill Station and others sort of have their own unique circumstance which need to be dealt with probably through the CIP process more generally.
Well, and I would add a couple buildings. One would be the Bellevue building and one would be the Sheriff's Department.
Well, there's another set of buildings, but yeah, let me finish that I think we need to look at about, are they in the mix at all? Do they need to be in the mix at all? And if so, what is it? Because they may need to be fairly dramatically have a reuse associated with them of some kind, whatever that is. I don't know what it is.
And we've got a situation where we've got 5 departments moving out of their current lodgings into the new building. And so that's created an unusual situation.
Extra space.
Which needs to be looked at. I mean, but it has to be looked at in the context of a couple of other buildings that are associated with it, or at least close by. So that's that's sort of we're gonna be faced, we as the collective, faced with making some decisions with respect to those 3 buildings at a minimum. And I agree with Mark that, that will also cause decisions about the sheriff's office building and some others, but they're much smaller in terms of the footprint.
If you look at the Sedgwick building, I mean, one of the issues with it is the fact that there's not enough parking to do all the stuff you need to do. So is there a way of taking advantage of other vacated space such that we can still use that building, but we won't put as much of a parking demand on it? And because it's central in the town, you really don't want to move things like the library or social services, so what else there,
Part of what's going on in the Sedgwick building, social services is out of space, they need more space. But there's no space in that building right now to expand anything. The second big issue is with the registrar's office and the changing in the voting halls. I think it's become pretty evident that we need to come up with
handicap access, yeah.
we need to come up with a different location. Well, it's actually the registrar's office has now become a polling place, and that building does not fit that role very well.
And that's part of what drives me to shining a brighter light on these 3 buildings, because there's things going on, as Mark mentioned, people leaving this building, issues with Sedgwick building that we know of, and opportunities in the community development building. There's space in the basement that can be renovated and built out and other kind of things. So those 3 at least are in play immediately.
I think my point is, I don't object to hiring a professional. But I think we need to carefully direct them to a few areas and not be from what I've seen in the past, when you start trying to do the comprehensive countywide thing, you wind up with something that's not usable when you get done.
And I don't disagree at all. And part of the reason that I wanted this discussion is I think I'm on very close to the same page as what you guys are talking about, but I didn't want to make that assumption. And then find out that the board would have wished for it to be a more comprehensive study. So I'm fine with that, and that's really the purpose of this work session.
Well, my biggest concern is the lifespan of the buildings that are mentioned. I can tell you, this building, having worked on it rather extensively.
Is that who did it?
Well, I will tell you, I think Aaron and Kirk can both confirm this. There's major challenges even just moving walls around for office space. You have two systems for each floor that everything is ducted totally incorrectly. There's issues on a regular basis with that. The electrical in here, and if you go above the ceiling back here, a mouse is gonna have a hard time getting through with all the crap that's shoved in. That whole back section is still going to be occupied, even though it's not going to be occupied. This room and the IT department are the only spaces potentially becoming vacant. And with, no, that won't be vacant. That is a backup emergency operations center and backup dispatch center.
It is.
Yes.
That aging equipment in there that's falling apart.
They, with our new systems and all the stuff that they have, they'll be able to bring things in and use them, but yes, that is our backup emergency communications. It probably will never get used, but especially because we're part of the North Anna nuclear thing, we've got to keep all that.
One of the things that as we begin to discuss this is how do we best serve the public? As we talk about, people getting to social services, people coming in to vote, people, so many of these are considerations that really, a lot of those considerations need to be made at the board because we're talking about how we best serve the public. So we want to be clued in on those, but that's a major consideration. I'm not sure we can use this space now for a new voting, those are the kind of things that we need to be saying, how can I best serve? And so rather than the mechanical understanding, they're saying, okay, don't bother putting anything there because that building's gonna die in a couple of years. But understanding how best to distribute our services to the public, where's the best place to put them, and sort of start with that and say, okay.
Well, but that goes back to the same point. Maybe the best place to put them structurally is a horrible place to put them.
That's right, in which case, then we have to make a decision, do we sub-optimize the service to the public because of a problem with the status of the infrastructure? But those are the kind of balances that I think really need to be made up here. And some conscious information about prospects for that.
So taking in what I'm hearing, if we were to focus this effort on the shorter list of buildings, if you think about the list of departments, there's good overlap between the ones we've said we need to figure out and the buildings we've said to figure out. And we can take out the others, and kind of maybe the phase one is those 5 buildings, I think is the ones we agreed on: Gordon, Sedgwick, Bellevue, Old Sheriff's Office, and Community Development. If we got those right, and the departments associated with them, that would be maybe that's a first phase, that it's the building and the space, and helps us to drive where we want to go next. Can we solve those departments with the space we have or not?
Well, I look at 2 of the offices over in the Sedgwick building that probably could be moved to another suitable location. The extension office and the Parks and Rec. They just need office space.
Right.
There's some public access there.
And then just, you have Office on Youth, which is probably, how many employees in there? Is it 4?
3 or 4.
Yeah, so I agree with you, but it's not just Parks and Rec, it's Office on Youth as well.
Understand, and so, but those are needing office space as opposed to public access There's some public access, but it's not the same as we need for voting or libraries or social services.
Yeah, I think I agree with Lee that my view of it is we take whatever funds we have available and energy we have available to focus on this and solve some of these immediate questions that are gonna that need attention. And it involves those buildings in the public access. And take a little bit of a fresh look in terms of, I think Lee makes some good points, but at least 3 of those 5 buildings really need frequent public access. It's an important piece of what they do. And somebody needs to look at that and say, where would they park? How do they enter? Is it truly accessible? And then there's a known staff at this point that needs to be best located, given the constraints of those, particularly the 3, but also the 5 buildings.
And any near-term expansion of the staff requirements.
That has at least a chance of giving us information that we need and can act on.
So we want to look at 5 buildings, 3 buildings.
Oh, I think you have to look at all 5, because the sheriff's building is gonna be presumably be vacated. And
Right, what is the future potential of the sheriff's building?
I think that's one of the questions that we need.
Any number of things.
Yeah.
Any number.
It's a serviceable building.
It's gonna give you the most opportunity the quickest, I would think, would it not?
Yeah, and at this point, I don't think we have a plan, or at least I'm not.
Well, what we've talked about, that's seemed to make as much sense as anything else is moving public works there. Because then that puts us close to the landfill, which is part of, under the umbrella of public works, and it puts us near the airport, which is under public works, and it gives us more room for storage. If you come into our office right now, we're in the Bellevue building, which was the old library, and we're just stacked to the ceiling with stuff, and it's not really very efficient.
And it may free up the building for some other purpose.
Again, that was just
No.
a suggestion, that's nothing set in stone on any of it.
That's a good example of what I'm talking about, is
Yeah.
let's solve that riddle.
Yeah, I think, and that'll take some, I'm not sure how much of outside help we need for that. We may need some outside help for evaluating the structural integrity of the places, but I think the kinds of talking you're mentioning are things that our staff can make some decisions on and make some recommendations on.
Well, you might want to have an architect look at access and parking and those kind of things. I mean, there's some work there, I think, that would benefit our decision-making at least. I don't know how to scope it, but.
I guess bottom line, I feel like we need to look and see what our problems are and then get a professional to help us fix them.
Yeah.
Rather than go to a professional and say, tell us what problems we have. That's the 2 different ways I see the process.
And we may not agree with the problems they tell us we
Would
have.
you gentlemen like to take a walking work session one day and visit some of the facilities
I think that's a good first step.
to get a more of an insight? You can go over to community development, raise the ceiling tiles, and see when they put brand new roof on it, the roof band rusting to pieces.
I think it's fine if anybody wants to do that. It's not what I'm talking about.
Okay,
I mean, I don't need to go back here and see if I can stick my pinky where you said a mouse couldn't go. That's not really the point. I think county staff is capable of saying, look, we've got this many employees, we've got this space, we've got this space over here, we need this, we need that.
This needs public access.
I don't
this
think I
way.
need to go there and verify that,
okay.
so some drywall needs to be fixed or that, but any board member who wants to do that, I think that's fine.
Okay, I'm just trying to get a consensus from the board for the next step forward, because
I think we should.
this is not.
I think we should try to decide, or talk a little bit about what we think we could use. I mean, for example, I'd like to be made aware of issues that people who are in these 5 buildings are facing today. Anything they have to tell us or that you know about it in terms of maintenance problems. There ought to be a.
Too hot or too cold.
Yeah, whatever that list of, situations is, we ought to know about it. I think, there are fairly easy ways, if we don't have updated layouts and floor plans and square footages and things are fairly easy ways of getting those done. You know, you can walk around an image and load it into something. You know, it'd be nice to see what these buildings actually look like. It'd be nice to know what the available parking is, you know, just some basic sort of starting points to what do these 5 buildings really have in the way of capability or problems? And the people that are living in them, what are they addressing frequently? And then maybe, you know, Ted, you could start thinking about the, sort of adding in the location. How do you move your teams around to get them, you know, in a reasonably efficient situation from a space standpoint? Just sort of first order kind of things. I mean, you know, take the sheriff's office. What makes sense there? I mean, maybe you know, thinking about moving public works and whatever else in there. It's a place to start the conversation. So I think there's a lot of information that could come to us in a form that we could have another discussion at a work session and say, yeah, that sounds like something we really do need to address now, or maybe that isn't gonna work at all, whatever the case might be.
So I'm hearing that, I feel that those are reasonable aspirations. What I wonder is whether we have the tools organic to the organization to do what you're suggesting without some consulting help, because you're correct that you can sort of scan these things in and move them around, but I don't know that we own that capability.
Well, then why don't we do this? Why don't we you know, take sort of the list of things that we talked about tonight in terms of information we'd like to have and tell us how you would best get that done. If it's, you know, internally, some additional help, some temporary help, whatever it is, you know, I think it's, I'm interested enough knowing this information that I think we should.
How about first step? Have all the staff in these buildings compile a list of deficiencies as far as their working space, that type of thing. Just come up with a space needs for each department.
Working space,
Or
storage
parking,
space, public
right,
access
right,
space,
Right.
Just
all those elements.
start with that first bite. That'd be,
I mean, we're building a database, but I think that's the focus, the immediate focus.
No, I think that's one thing a consultant would do. They would interview staff, find that out.
That's exactly
If
right.
I mean, a suggestion box, I don't think is gonna work very well. There's
Yeah, I
gotta be some kind of a way to take the input and get it in a database so you can.
I would hesitate to reach out to staff and have them on their own develop that.
so do we hire a half a consultant to do half of what we're talking about? I just want to find
I think what
a
we're,
median.
I think what we're trying to work through here is what do we want? I think that's what we're working through. And what I don't want to do is hire a consultant to come in and do a comprehensive countywide, tell us what we need and how we can fix it. I think we should decide what we need. Now, we may need a consultant or, you know, a number cruncher to assist us in that. If we need to hire somebody to interview staff and just as was done with the new building. That to me is not the same thing as having somebody nosing around and saying, well, you need to move this department into 5,000 square feet more. I mean, I don't want to get into that.
So it's a scope.
We'll have to find
scope
that
adjustment.
eventually, but we know, but we don't, that isn't the first step.
Why don't we take this feedback and see if we can tweak it into a scope that we think is responsive to what we've heard. And then,
You could take the recording of the meeting and run it through software. Maybe it would come out translated into English. Then you would have an idea.
I don't think AI has reached that stage yet.
I think Watson.
But I think you could come back and as part of this and identify things that could be done internally or versus those that are better done with some additional help. I don't think anybody's saying don't get help.
I mean, it's hard for me to believe that there are major deficiencies out there that either the county administrator or the department director don't know about. I mean, I think you guys are aware of what the problem here is.
I mean, I'm aware of the space limits on social services and the lack of parking over there. I mean, that's
I think we are all aware of lack of parking, yeah.
Is that something you can work with, Kurt?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Aaron.
All right.
All that, we still get 20 minutes.
Yes. We're all good. 20 minutes.
How do we do that?
I'm really not.
Hold or Walker, can you pause the live stream, please? Cole or Walker, can you get ready to resume the live stream?
You all are good to go.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Orange County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under adoption of the agenda, I believe we have a couple of changes. Under special presentations and appearances would be the broadband manager's report, Ms. Foster. And then 5G, straight from your agenda. That's all we have, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right. Next is special presentations and appearances. Mr. Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the invite. I want to give an update of what's been going on with the broadband authority. Ultimately, the broadband authorities wants to have universal broadband coverage, and we want to complete it by 2025. In order to do that, we've got to obtain some outside funding because we cannot do it alone. So pretty much there's two opportunities that we plan on applying for. That's the Department of Commerce, the Broadband Infrastructure Program, and the BADI grant, which we qualify for the first time with legislation that passed. So a little bit about the Department of Commerce grant. There's $288 million available. The awards are going to be from $5 million to $30 million. We could also get additional points if you get 10% cash or in kind. Fortunately, the fiber we've already put in and what we could use for in kind, we're going to exceed that 10%, which will give us more points. Another area is they're looking at future-proof infrastructure, which we're placing fiber, so we get additional points for that. Also, they are preferring government/cooperative-owned networks, which we are, so we get points for that. Ultimately, the key to this grant, I want to let you know, is if we determine one or two homes or business in a census tract that does not have internet access, we can claim that census tract for a grant application. So we've got a map. You can look on the back. It's in blue. This is all areas that we're looking for Department of Commerce. We haven't finalized, but we're talking roughly 120 census tract and servicing 3,541 residents. That figure's gonna go up because we're actually got newer information from GIS in the county. Some of the roads, this is just kind of the blocks. We know we've got more people that's moved in since the last census tract. So ultimately, this is an idea of an areas that we could qualify. If you have any questions on that, I'd be glad to answer or offline, but I just wanted you to be aware of this. The key is this is gonna have to be built within 12 months or they will allow for an extension. We're planning on to hire a couple of contractors that has Davis-Bacon and federal government experience. We're gonna pay more per mile, but this is gonna be money well spent. You see the government wants to spend between 5 and 30 million per award. So we're going for the gusto. Our goal is we're gonna get Orange County broadband gig ready shortly.
This is near term. You might mention the grant applications have to be in September or whatever it is, and then the award is still this calendar year. So these are year term.
Also, we've got some consultants out of Washington DC I worked with in Georgia when we got the BTOP award. Also attorneys and that knows the FCC and the Department of Commerce very well. They have one-on-one knowledge, and they're working us through the grant application. So I feel very good. We're gonna have a very strong application. The next is the body application. They got a little over 49 million. We were on a conference call last week. when they go back in session, they plan on upping that up for additional money. The key item here, the Broadband Authority is in a special category that can get up to 10% of their funding. So right now, we can get almost 4.9 million any broadband authority in the state. I only know of one other broadband authority that's doing last mile in this area, and that's Eastern Shore. There's another broadband authority doing middle mile. But we're hoping our track record, since we started in April, when we start showing our results, we're gonna get a lot of positive feedback. Matter of fact, as I've been sending the folks up there, Kyle with the governor's office and some other folks in DHCD, stuff that I send to Broadband Authority every week, I forward them an updated report because I'm trying to get on their radar. Basically, the next thing I want to give you a little subscriber update. You can flip the page. As of this morning, when I woke up and looked at the computer, we had 699 subscribers connected. We've got 162 that's scheduled to be installed. We're well over 700 now. We've got 114 miles and some change that's 5 miles ready for service. We've passed 2,212 subscriber potential. Our current take rates is 38.92%. As Mr. Frame said, when we get ready to release another a road tomorrow, our percentage is going to go down. So Mr. Frame said I should strategically give us percentages.
Take advantage of the peak.
Exactly. So our average install lead time is 20 and a half days. Our biggest problem, we could do it within 10 or 12 days, but our locates. Locates is a big issue. The company that does Verizon, Redpan Electric, they've lost numerous staff. Also, people's been it's very demanding. And we've been talking to the state. We had our contractors write them up, and they went through an audit of whatever's illegally doing things, so they're finding them as we speak. We're calling 3-hour notices on our mainline construction. So we're working our due diligence. So also there's a list of all the roads to service. It will change by Friday. We'll get a new update. We're going to release some additional roads. Also, I failed to mention, this is the map here for the body. The state does not classify any satellite money as broadband. So we're going wherever RDOF, the satellite awarded in December, we're going for all those areas. And we know we got a limit of funding each year, but we're going to do a 2-year program showing what we're going to do. So we're going to ask for the whole thing with funding this year and then half next year. We will have a separate crew. Jose and their folks will be doing this, and other folks. Matter of fact is, we're gearing up. We're looking at how much fiber, how much duct, how many handholds we need, because what we want to do with the Department of Commerce, I want to show them, they want to say shovel ready, I want to show them that I've got enough fiber or duct at Bluebell or on order that we can meet the same. So that's my strategy. Once we finish finalizing the routes, we've got to have everything on order, getting lined up, but also we're going to need some letter of support from the county. The county has to be like an agent. Matter of fact, we appreciate finance for setting it up, allowing us to go in and put the grant. But also, we're going to need some letter of support from the school board. We're going to need some from our federal folks. If anybody, if you could help me get some letter of support for these grants, because I'm so busy in the weeds trying to get the details. So I'm soliciting today, anything that you could do to help get a letter of support, we need. We've got this once in a lifetime opportunity of the federal and state funds, and fortunately we're in great shape compared to other counties of where we are today. So I just kind of want to give you an update, and if you have any questions for me.
Thank you, Lewis. Any questions, comments? Thank you very much for the update, Lewis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louis.
Right, next consent agenda.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. All right, next is new business, and I will call Amanda Amos up for the first 4 items under new business. Could just send you back and forth, but that would be really nice.
I appreciate it, I'll do that. Okay, up first, we have the renewal agreement with Goodwill Industries for the Orange Workforce Center. The Workforce Center has the basement of the Bellevue building. It's where they have an access point for their satellite office. During the 6th contract term, July 2020 to May 2021, there were 449 visitors served, 318 of which were in person, 131 were virtual sessions. The monthly average was 40.8. Funding was requested in the FY22 operating budget of the EDA Workforce Center, totaling $20,740 to Goodwill Industries for office supplies and personnel expenses for the resource room. We are requesting the MOU with Goodwill to be renewed for office space for the Orange Workforce Center for 1 year, effective July 1st, 2021 through July 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Amanda. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second. Any questions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you for that one, Amanda. Next is renewal contract with Change Healthcare for EMS billing and collection services.
Actually, I think we're the airport
Oh,
engineering.
I'm sorry, yes, airport.
In March of this year, we released a solicitation seeking proposals from firms to provide airport planning, professional engineering advice, and services related to the Orange County Airport. We received 7 responses. After reviewing the proposals, we had interviews with the top ranked firms and decided that Delta Airport Consultants and Talbert and Bright offer professional services that best suit with airport related projects. They are our current vendors. So we are asking to enter into contracts with both Delta Airport Consultants and Talbert and Bright for 1 year with the possibility of 4 1-year renewals.
Questions?
Motion to approve.
Second? Second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, the next one is contracts for environmental engineering services.
Again, we released a solicitation in March seeking proposals from firms seeking professional environmental engineering services for Orange County. We received 6 responses. After staff reviewed the responses, we held interviews, talked to firms. We decided to stay with Labella Associates and Draper Aiden Associates. They can provide consistent, high-quality professional services, appropriately scaled to meet Orange County needs. We currently have contracts with these vendors. So we are asking to enter into contracts with both Labella and Draper Aiden for 1 year with the possibility of 4 1-year renewals.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And then the last one is going to be utilization of cooperative contract with MCCI for the implementation of laserfish.
We would like to enter into a contract with MCCI for the implementation of laserfish for our social services department. This is a cooperative contract. Laserfish will help social services manage past and future records safely and securely. Currently, they have a management system for some of the benefits and then a separate one for other documents. And they just don't store the records properly. So this would help keep everything in one location and would help with future records. After much discussion, social services determined that the best option would be moving forward with the implementing of Laserfish to serve all of their document management needs. The cost is $130,622. Funding for this implementation will be in the CARES Act Computer Software Fund. The reoccurring annual maintenance fees will be paid out of Social Services Data Processing Fund.
So this is just for increased efficiency and security.
Yes, security.
Digital citizen.
Very good.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, next one we always like to hear about. Health, dental, optional insurance renewals. Jenny Carpenter, HR Director.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to introduce.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Heath Thomas, he is with Mark III, our insurance broker, and in just a few moments, he is going to walk us through a PowerPoint where we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive into our renewal data. But before we begin, I just wanted to touch on a few high points, as this is my first renewal with the county, so excited to be here and talk through this with you all. As you know, this last year has been unlike any other, and as we began our conversations earlier this year with Mark III and digging into our claims data, we saw that we had experienced a higher than normal claim activity, which would have warranted in this new plan year an increase of well over 14%. So, and that's without any plan changes. And so we began to strategize and having multiple conversations with Mark III and the schools as well as representatives from the county. And we know that there is a desire from the administrative level along with the board to reduce dependent tier premium costs and offer more affordable coverage to our employees and their dependents, while at the same time working to become a more competitive locality with benefit offerings. And so we have, again, put some data together and we're going to walk through that in just a moment. But for the new plan year, what we would like to do is to continue with our current plans that we have. We've made some adjustments to the deductibles and co-pays to offset some of the costs. But we'll again continue to keep our 3 current plans. And for the plan year next year, we will most likely sunset our PPO plan, Key Care plan. And that at the end of the day will save us quite a bit of money once we eliminate that plan as well. Regarding our dental coverage and our remaining ancillary benefits, there were no increases for those. So we would recommend continuing with those as they are. And we'll touch on some of the financial pieces in just a moment as well. But we are truly optimistic for our new plan year and hoping that our costs will come down. Our stop loss has kicked in for the rest of this year on many of our high claimants, so we are happy about that piece. But we, again, we're truly optimistic for the new plan year and driving some of these costs down, but also working diligently to bring the premiums down for our employees rather than passing along the brunt of the increase to our employees. And with that, I'll turn it over to Keith and he can walk us through the deck that Mark III has put together for us.
Just press down.
Just press on that.
Press, the left and right arrows and it'll scroll through.
Good evening. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be here. Last year, when we started this relationship with Orange County and schools, I believe this was the first virtual board meeting that I was able to attend. last year, so I appreciate the full circle transition back. I wanted to take a minute really to go through some of the history of the claims and how we got to where we are today. So when Mark III took over the account last year, we ran claims through April of 20. And then immediately after that, we had 3 months of really high utilization. And as we see through the slides, a lot of it is high claimants. We've got a significant chunk of the population that's not spending very much claims dollars at all, and a very small chunk of the population is spending a lot. So again, we renewed the plan based on April. We had 3 bad months. So as we were coming up to the new year, we were anticipating looking at making some changes. I know there was the desire to streamline the pricing for this county and the schools. And I also want to note that your stop loss has provided extreme protection. So in the pink box, the 251% is the ROI that the county and schools is currently receiving on their stop loss insurance through Anthem. That is the amount over $150,000 where Anthem comes in and gives you the reimbursements back for that. So you're getting extremely good value out of that stop loss contract, even though we did have that increase to the stop loss last year. When we got to 2021, the plan was trending well. We were looking at basically a break-even position, but I will note that our 12 months of high-cost claimants, and these are claims over $25,000, and you can see in some of the additional material you've got, there are claims towering well over $500,000. So there are some substantial utilization claim issues in the group, but on that 12 months rolling, over the $25,000 threshold, we had nearly $5 million of claims, and that equates to 62% of the total claim spend, but only 51 members out of the 1,300. So 1,250 members are spending roughly 35% of the claims, while the 4% spend the other 62.
Just out of curiosity.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a split between school system and general county?
We have not done a split in the county and schools yet because there was a lot of interest in consolidating down, and we didn't want the perception that one was leading the other down a path.
Okay. Not a problem, thank you.
Sure. So in regards to the plan changes that went into place that Jenny referenced, we are going to ask to increase the deductible from the current level of $500 on the copay plan to $1,500, along with an increase in the out-of-pocket maximum from $4,000 to $5,000. And these incremental plan changes do more modernize the plan and what we see, but we're leaving the people that have chosen to go to a more consumer-driven plan, the HSA plan, we're leaving those people alone. So no change to that plan if they're already on the HSA, which is beneficial. And again, the Key Care plan will plan to be grandfathered for 21-22 with a plan to sunset in 22 and beyond. The rationale behind that is a Key Care claim, if it's an identical claim in a Key Care network versus the HealthKeeper network, the county and the employee actually is paying about 6% greater cost on the Key Care network. So when we look at savings for the overall group, it is and the HealthKeepers network is excellent.
How many do you have in each category, do you know?
We were 30.
Yeah, for the
For the PPO?
we have about 22, about 32.
And about 22 from the schools and about 10 from the county, I
Yeah,
believe is the breakdown. So a very small segment of the population still on that plan. So we anticipate minimal impact. Again, this plan will be grandfathered, so they'll be able to keep this. We'll let them know that the plan is scheduled to sunset for 2022 so that they can start to look at other options.
So almost all of them are in the HealthKeepers 25.
The vast majority are split between the HealthKeepers 25 and the HSA plan.
Okay.
So as we roll through to looking at renewal this year, again, focusing on that April timeframe, and we actually have May claims in here, I just want to show you that really the high-cost claimants are continuing to be an issue, but the stop loss, and I will back up just 1 second. When we had these high claims in 2020, our stop loss, as we get to the end of the plan year, we should anticipate that those credits continue to go up. And I know for June of 21, we're looking at about a $300,000 stop loss credit just for June coming in. So there is some relief coming in the plan, which is why we do have a positive outlook on the plan. The leading conditions on the plan are unfortunately things that in our world we like to talk about wellness and the impact of wellness. And while we could have some of that, the high cost claimants really are non-wellness related. They are for cancer, chronic renal heart disease, and other conditions that just really are not impacted by wellness. So in summary, we had the high cost claimant spike of 19/20, which has created the increase. We're still seeing a slight increase, putting the plan into a minor deficit, but we do anticipate that that will be mitigated with the stop loss credits coming in, and we will continue to monitor the plan performance. So with the changes, I think we've done an excellent job, given the circumstances of COVID, given all the other things, to really impact the population in a great way. Again, I go back to the percentages of your staff that are spending the money. If we can save 94%, 95% on their premiums when they're paying for their dependents, of those costs that they spend every month while changing the deductible, I think that was a much better opportunity than passing on an increased cost to employees at a time when they really couldn't take it.
What did you say to the change in the deductible and copay is?
It's from a $500 deductible to a $1,500 deductible, and from a $4,000 out of pocket to $4,500. So the overall expense for those employees would be an additional $500 in a catastrophic situation.
And that's for a very small group of employees, is that correct?
So that is for a smaller group. We would like to see more people go to the HSA, which is why we did not make adjustments to that plan. The small group is the Key Care PPO plan. There is a substantial population still on the Health Keepers 25 copay plan. And we anticipate those two plans to stay in place moving forward.
Good. Any questions?
Just looking at this thing. There's a case in here for a child cystic fibrosis with embedded and impacted teeth. But it's interesting, the medical cost is $488. The pharmacy is $292,000.
Correct. So there's certain conditions that are more pharmacy driven, such as maybe a rheumatoid arthritis, where you're not really having a lot of medical spend, but you have a ton of pharmacy spend. And then there's things that are the other way, where you have a substantial amount of medical and maybe even zero pharmacy spend, depending on the situation.
That was just an interesting,
Well, and on those reports that you have, again, I'll just note the spread. Those are only the 51 claims that are above the 25,000. It is a very small segment of claims in the population, but they're obviously the big drivers. And those that are falling between the 90,000 and the 150,000 currently on that list, those are the claims that we anticipate will start hitting that stop loss and start to ease the burden of the plan in the remaining few months of the plan year.
Any questions, comments?
A question about the stop loss. Any recommendations? Are we at the right stop loss number? Does that need to be repriced, rethought in any way, or is it? How you're seeing that play out? Is that probably finds us in the right place?
That's a great question. So last year we did actually bid out the stop loss when we were facing the big increase. We did find that Anthem was very reasonable. And based on the high cost claims that we're seeing now come to fruition in the claims, I think their increase in the stop loss was very justified. The stop loss this year was a minimal increase from what we would normally see. So we didn't anticipate a need to shop it this year, but it is a possibility to potentially look at moving to a 175 specific stop loss or even a 200. Now, obviously that will save money on the premium, but puts more liability on the county and schools on the front end of those claims. So it's all about a balancing act. So I do feel that we are in a good position from a stop loss standpoint at this point in time. And for Glenda for the financials, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Just want to give the rest of the picture with just a little update on the health insurance fund and where we are financially. Although some of that was discussed previously, but for FY20, we did end up using fund balance in FY20 of $350,705, and that was really, I don't know if you remember, but this time last year I was before you and we were estimating that we were going to add to fund balance. So it was really those final few months and then the incurred but not reported claims that continued to be paid on into July and August that pushed us into this deficit for FY20. But even so, that left the fund with a fund balance of $1,498,000 at last June 30th. With the way that claims have been running this year and trying to estimate, you know, what our final June numbers will be and then what our incurred but not reported claims will be for this year. I've estimated that we would use another $710,000 in fund balance. And this is really due to two reasons. One is the extraordinarily high increase in the claims that we've seen, but the other is because the schools had a number of vacant positions during the year. I know they had at least 30 vacant positions, so their employer contributions into the fund were running at about $20,000 less per month than they did in the previous fiscal year. Our claims were way higher, but our revenues coming in were even lower. And so the combination has had this detrimental effect on our fund balance. One of the strategies that I'm suggesting we could use to try to continue the health of our fund balance in that fund is to make a transfer of any remaining local school contribution at the end of FY21, because we could do a one-time transfer of that amount, and I have discussed this with the finance director at the school system. He is estimating that it would be between $250,000 and $450,000. So in the estimates that we provided, I used $350 as the happy medium. If we could do that, it would mean that we would end FY21 with a fund balance of $1.1 million rather than $787 without that. In addition, as you probably remember, both the school and the county, we budgeted 5% increases on the employer contribution in the budget that was adopted. And so we would like the board to consider approving an appropriation of fund balance in FY22 to get the employer contributions up to 9%. That's about $50,000 for the county and about $140 for the schools, but of course they have already identified the money to be able to do that on their side. So we're talking about $50,000 out of the general fund, basically. Then just in doing my estimates, another strategy that we talked about to try to mitigate some of the damage to the fund balance was in the adopted budget, we had proposed funding the wellness organizational development position out of the health insurance fund. But what we'd like to do is fund that from the ARPA funds that we're receiving, and that would save about $88,000 in the health insurance fund for FY22. And we're just really hoping that we're going to see a trend of claims going down. And we have actually seen that for the last 2 months, but we're still running ahead of what we had budgeted for the year. So we did see just at the 1st of June, I think about 5 out of 9 of those high claimants did hit the stop loss. And so that's going to help us not have to bear the entire brunt of those claims as we finish out the plan year. But in your package, the very last page is the rates that we recommended. So you can see those, and that is really what we're asking for your approval tonight is the approval of those rates, and then approval of this strategy of using the school's local contribution to try to do a one-time shot in the arm to the fund to make up for those lost contributions from the vacancies, and then to adjust the budget in FY22 to get from the 5% to the 9% on the employer side.
Thank you, Glenda. Questions, comments? one comment. Seems like when we have a bad year, that's what it is. It's a bad year. It's not the normal year. And I'm old, but if my memory serves me properly, I asked the same question, I believe it was 3 years ago. We had an atrocious year. Well, it'll be better. This is an anomaly. Well, 2 out of 4 years does not seem to be an anomaly. And I'm glad to see that we're moving towards someone to encourage better health and everything, but something we may need to look at in the future is somehow putting more reserve into the healthcare so that when we have these things happen, it's not, oh, we had an unusually high. Because I distinctly remember asking, it was either 2 or 3 years ago, that exact question when we had an abnormally high year.
Right, and that's one reason that I included the chart, so that you can see that we have had, I think 4 out of the 7, we have actually done better than, we've had some money left over instead of using it fund balance. However, this year has been a wake-up call for how fast it can go. Because it was a double whammy with the vacancies and then the high claims at the same time.
I have a question. When we went into self-insured, have we at any time made any comparisons to what our self-insured expenses would be relative to some of the other possibilities? I mean, I would probably think that we're probably still good being self-insured, but I just wonder if we ever made a comparison to say, yep, you're doing a great job by staying self-insured.
Yeah, so
I'll let Heath
So,
answer that one.
I won't say it's a hard line in the sand, but normally the threshold is around 500 employees that you really could go either direction. Once you're above that, you really just don't have the ability to take advantage of the good year, like on the plans where we have had those positivities. Hopefully, the goal is that they offset the bad years. But that is the risk of being self-funded. You get the benefit of the positivities and you get the negatives of the negatives. It's a bigger roller coaster ride.
So
It's fully insured.
nobody's actually gone down and looked at the numbers, they're just basically based on experience?
So fully insured, you would have to pay your ACA fees that would go up substantially. So there's some other things that would come into a cost standpoint. It would almost be nearly impossible to get the quality of the plan that you have right now if going through a fully insured chassis. And you also would not have the ability to pick and choose and change these copays and deductibles in the way that we're doing it on a self-funded basis.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Linda, I'm a little troubled by the idea that we're going to take money from some phantom people and pretend that they were, if they had been there, they'd all been healthy people, and none of them would have had any claims. I would prefer to just have Orange County write a check out of the general fund saying we're gonna put this back to whatever, or to whatever level, or even just say, it really doesn't matter as long as there's some money in the fund, doesn't really matter because Orange County's gonna stand behind it. To me, it's funny math to say, we're gonna take, a bunch of vacancy savings basically, and we're gonna pretend that somehow it's. Yeah, I mean, because this is all Orange County's money.
I can't argue with that point.
This is all Orange County's money.
It's like I have that appropriation in the general fund for the local school transfer, so, I can get that money over to the insurance fund before June 30th, so that in the CAFR that the fund balance is not as bad off as it will be otherwise, which was my thinking.
So it's just which pot it
But
comes out
you're
of?
right, it's all out of the general fund, no matter what we call it, and that's, the general fund reserves are a backstop for the entire thing, so that's.
Another reason why it bothers me, it kind of goes to what Lee was asking about the comparison. If we're kind of pumping money in, but we're pretending like we're not really pumping money in, then it disguises the fact that maybe we should think about going another way, or, you know, I'd rather kind of really know where I'm at.
Mhm.
And if the fund is getting low and the county has to make a transfer, well, then that's gonna be there, and that's in black and white. We all know that the county had to put $1 million into whatever.
Mhm.
I think if we do it this way, to me, it kind of glosses over that.
Does, especially with those vacancies.
But
It doesn't add up.
But if it depends on whether we take it out of our general fund or out of the money from the school. Is that right?
The money from the school is just gonna come back to the general fund.
Right, it's all
All right, well, it comes
from
back,
that
okay,
same
so we raise the
source,
check out of
yeah.
the general fund.
Yeah,
You're right, okay, yeah, that's probably, just let it come back and then write the check out of it, rather than calling it a special consideration from the school. All right, I got it.
What was your target number for the fund balance at year end? I thought I saw it, I can't find it again. The one you're shooting for.
Right, the one I'm shooting for, well, are you, is Mr. Johnson, are you saying that rather than using the 350 from local school operating contribution, just do a transfer from general for 350 instead, or some other number?
Well, is there a number, fund balance number, and when we fund balance, the health insurance fund balance, we're talking about different fund balances floating around. But the health insurance fund balance, is there a number that we feel like we have to keep in there in order for the auditor to not set off alarm bells?
I don't think that we necessarily have to keep it in that fund, but what the benchmark that we have used in the past was 2 months worth of expenditures, which is probably at this point around 1.4 million is where we would like to be.
That was my question.
Okay.
If you're trying to get to the 1.4, what do you need, from whatever source, to get to the 1.4 being on the books
Right.
as of June 30?
Well, about 600,000 probably. And this is a big if, because on the run out claims, I estimated only the average of the last 7 years run out claims, which is about 500 and some thousand. Last year, they turned out to be over 700,000. So, you know, I could be off by a couple 100,000 here. And I won't know that until the end of August, what that number really should be.
You know, I'm probably obtuse, but I don't understand really the point of keeping any particular amount in the fund. If the county were using money from the fund to fund general, and we said when it gets up to 1.4 million, we're gonna take and scrape off anything extra, put it in the general fund, but we're not doing that. We let it pile up, and I think it was up to 1.7 million at one point, something like that. So I'm not sure, I don't even understand why we have like this 1.4 million, what the point is.
Yeah. Well,
Given that we can put money into it.
It is only a benchmark, and I think when we're talking about the benchmark, we are just focused on that fund, that entity. You know, and in our case, it's true that we have a very healthy general fund balance. So in the grand scheme of things, as long as we all know that that is the backstop to this fund, when, you know, when there's no more money in this fund, that's
Give
what
us
it's
more
for.
visibility into the healthcare, into the health insurance issue as a whole.
Well, and will this give us a ding by the auditors for having a reduced healthcare fund?
I wouldn't think so.
I don't really think so, because it's not a compliance issue, you know, so I don't think it will be an issue. It might be something they point out to us and say, you know.
Let me explain what I'm trying to get here, because and I'm not saying you would forget, but I think the 5 pointy heads up here would forget. You put this money in there and you bring it back, I think then it's all good and we can go away. And we can't lose sight of the fact that, no, actually it cost us $700,000 more than we thought it was going to. And there really should be a way to that to stay top of mind. I mean, when we can, there's always happy talk at the front end about what we think is gonna happen. But as Mr. Crozier pointed out, and I think you said like 4 of the 7 years we made money. That means 3 of the 7, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like an every other year kind of thing at this point. And
That's my concern.
I don't know.
I just like a way to keep us focused on what's really going as opposed to.
Well, I think that does. We made money 4 years, we lost money 3 years. I mean, this fund balance and having that, and having to put money into it, if we exceed the, but it gives us an indicator of where we're at. I mean, just it's a barometer, or whatever you want to call it, in terms of keeping the focus on what health insurance
Yeah,
is.
but the 1.4 million is just something
I know.
kind of pulled out of the blue.
I know, it's just a swag that we use as a number.
I want a way that helps us to keep track of, because I think, you're the one who asked the question about comparing it to another type of program.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you see a risk in letting it naturally land where it does without putting a Band-Aid on it as part?
Not for the current year, but in the upcoming year, if things don't change with these claims, we could actually go negative. And I don't wanna
And
be
maybe that's a good thing
coming
for us
back
to know about.
mid-year saying, we're
I mean,
completely out.
if the slope looks that bad, I suspect you'll let us know before it goes to the negative number. And we will end up having to dig into the general fund pocket.
But it doesn't take that long to drop into that.
And we'll bid it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the plan continues to trend downward, it would be our recommendation that next year we would put the plan out to bid, and that at point we could explore all options to include fully insured, to include other potential plans that are out there that are carved out, network self-funding. I mean, there's a lot of options out there if it continues to go downward. The plans that you have right now are excellent with Anthem. I think the changes are still excellent, and the pricing structure that we've developed between the county and the schools, I think, is beneficial to the employees.
Back to your point, Mr. Johnson. Nice speech, but back to
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
What he said.
I think it's probably better information for us to not go in and put
Make that
stimulus money
one-time
in the fund balance, because, there could come a time when it's, based on having what I see in some other places, it's probably not, it's still, I would say, very advantageous to be self-insured at this point, because we're not looking at those 28 and 36% rate increases, which you're seeing in the marketplace in other places. But it should cause us to keep an eye on it, and maybe next year or the year after, whenever it's appropriate, reevaluate the whole thing. Well, we can move in and out. It's
Correct.
not, this is not a forever commitment.
No. Well, and maybe, change how we're doing some things so we don't have these shortfalls. I mean, there's two different things. There's outgo and then there's income. So,
Yeah, and
I
I
mean,
did
it's-
speak with Gary and I said, all those vacant positions that went on because of the virtual learning and everything, are those people coming back? And he said, yes, for sure, they are coming back in the fall. And the only positions that I should, that would go unfilled were bus drivers that they hadn't been able to fill for several years. So that's not really in my history anyway.
But let me try to explain another what I'm trying to get at here. It sounds like to me that we're not charging them. That's what it sounds like to me. And when I say we're not charging them, I'm not talking about let's charge the employees more. I'm saying we're just not setting the premium where it should be. Now, again, this is the county's money, so, but I would rather have it, you know, if it's gonna cost us basically, you know, I'll pick a number, it's gonna cost us 10,000 per employee to do business, then we should just go in with that as being, that's what we need to, that's the figure we're charging is 10,000 per employee. Not, again, I'm not talking about the employee paying 10,000, I'm talking about the cost overall. The county is picking up the lion's share of that. Rather than trying to make it look good on the front end and only charging $8,500, and at the end of the year, oh, well, we need $700,000.
You said charge, you're talking about budget, we should budget the number, the 10,000.
Well, we charge ourselves a premium.
Right, we do.
Is the point I'm making.
That flows into the budget.
Yeah.
Which is what our budget number is.
Right, and it's, you know, so when there's vacancy savings, there's this money that we suddenly didn't pay ourselves, oh darn, you know, I mean.
Revenue went down.
Revenue from ourselves went down. Maybe we should be charging ourselves more money to begin with, rather than trying to make it look happy on the front end and then on the back end going, oops.
Right, well, let me say, and you correct me if I'm wrong. But for FY '22, with these rates, I believe that is what we're doing. Those are the rates with the employer paying 9% and the employees not having any increase and some of the family tiers getting an actual decrease. That is the amount that the fund needs based on the latest estimates to break even.
And let me just say, as we're talking about reducing employee costs, the overall spend, and I think this was known, is your spend, is the board, the county spend. Impacting the employee spend is monumental to them, but in regards to funding the overall account balance is not a substantial change to that. So by doing this 10%, you get to help the employees. But I agree, if the board wants to fund on the front end on a higher level to not have any back and forth, that's just
So,
up to the board.
and let me again make it very clear what I'm saying. I think the employees, be careful what I say, because there's a lot of people out there who are listening, who are in the private sector, who maybe have no insurance at all. But if Orange County is going to be serious about providing this, then it should be something that I think is a good program. And I'm concerned right now that we're not providing as good a program as we should, and we're getting all wrapped around the axle of trying to make the numbers look happy on one end. And I just think we need a rethink on how we approach this. This is a benefit that we provide to the citizens, to the employees. And, you know, to the extent that we're always messing with it, I just don't think it's helpful, and, you know, nickel and diming here and there. Why don't we get it straight to begin with?
And it may be good to put it into our financial strategies like we have so many other things, to set an actual benchmark on it to make sure that we do continue on this path, just as we have with reserves and everything else. That way we do stay on top of it. We see it every year, and we're doing exactly what you're saying.
But you're saying that you're raising to 9% puts us in this category of basically getting to the point where we are inflow and outflow is the same.
For this year.
For the upcoming plan year that starts in October. So the way I was approaching it was, you know, that there's been a problem during this fiscal year because of the really high claims, unusual high claims, and the fact that the school had so many vacancies that they weren't contributing to the fund like they normally would, because, you know, the annual cost is like over $7,000, so I mean, it really was.
And those are just factors that would affect it on any given year.
In that case there, those 20 that left, if they had big medical problems, they didn't leave.
Yeah.
Right, that's,
So like, we would have gotten the benefit of all of those contributions probably.
Are so many of these claims reoccurring claims from the same individual? Just curious.
I don't know how granular we want to get into the data of that, but those are individual claims. There could be some crossover on that, but no, those 51 claims are individual numbers.
And those
It's
are
not the
for,
same- I mean, it's not the same problem this year as it was last year.
Some of them are recurring,
Reoccurring, that's why I'm asking.
not all of them. It's tough to
Fair
blanket
amount
statement
could
and
be.
say there are some that are absolutely reoccurring and have no anticipation of leaving. They may be perpetual claims.
That's what I'm getting at.
And that's where I stopped, yeah.
Correct.
All right.
Well, we can proceed in any way you like. If you'd like us to come back, at the first meeting in July or the second meeting in July and with another.
to meet Mark's point of trying to set these rates appropriate for what we need, are these numbers gonna do it? Are those numbers we expect to do it? I mean, if you were to come back and meet Mark's goal there, is this the numbers you would provide?
So the rates are based around trend. If we have another 22% increase, that is just something that's out of our control based on projections. And we normally work off of a 12% trend mark, 8% per year, 12% per 18-month plan time. So based on that and the increase on the current claims, yes, the funding should. But if we get hit with a 25%, that would have been a bad year for anybody at any time, and we'll be back in the same boat, which would again prompt us likely to go out to
Do
bid.
we want to
based on
fund for the
claims.
bad years, or do we want to fund for what become as some sort of a mean or median or average?
Well, it sounds like that there's sort of two things working here. To Mark's point, which I agree with, we should fund according to our best estimates as to what it's going to be based on projections and history and whatever else goes into that calculation. Whatever that number is, we shouldn't pretend
That it's something less.
that it's something less. We should go with the advice and the analysis to do it. That's one part. The other part is, do we worry about the fund balance and go in and sort of tickle it to make it look better? I think we should stop doing that, frankly. So that would be sort of my two takeaways from what I heard. Quit tickling the fund balance and let's use the best available projection we have.
Well, and if there is this, given this apparent need, at least in one sense, to tickle the fund balance, then it would be better to tickle it up front and essentially build a profit into the system.
Right.
I mean, businesses don't go out and try to break even for the year. They want to actually make a profit, and a good bit of that is to get them through the bad times or when something blows up or a machine breaks down. So you're not just, the profit is not just what the business owner may be putting in his or her pocket.
Which if you go back to our financial policies, that's what we've done with everything except the healthcare balance.
We've built contingencies in, and we've got rainy day funds and
Yep.
rainy day funds on top of rainy day funds.
Right, and if we would do the same thing with this, we could have catastrophic events that it will not cover, but it would be nice to plan that in there, cover it at a higher level, and fund what we're funding instead of playing the shell game.
I guess that's the question. We look at that and if there's another number that we should be aware of, then you
He's
can
already
make
told
us.
us that this is what he's estimating based on his best guess.
Right.
That's correct. But we can build in whatever cushion the board deems necessary. If you want, if your goal, sorry, Stan, if your goal is to grow that fund, sorry, we can take the rates that are based on the projections and increase those contributions to help grow that fund on a slow path, 1%, 2%, 3%, if that's the desire of the board. And we can build those on the front end. You can go ahead and budget that out.
How about we take what we have at hand and make a decision on this and then come back.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with approving what's here. The work's been done. We're on the precipice. We need to move on. For next year, if I'm still here, I'm going to be asking these questions again. And I think what we need to do instead of getting all worried because it drops, we're keeping kind of a minimal fund balance. I think we should try to build that fund balance through charging more realistic premiums to begin with.
Okay.
Charging ourselves more realistic. That forces the county to put the money into the fund up front instead of scrambling around.
So we would approve their recommendations, other than the 350 coming out of the thing, and make that straight out of our general fund.
Or we just wouldn't do the 350.
Just let it land where it lands.
Just let the fund land where it lands.
But I will need to do the 50,000 and the 140 for the schools to deal with the FY22 problem, because we only put 5 in the budget and I need to get to 9. But that's to make those revenues and expenditures balance, like we're talking about. To get to the real number.
All right. Looking for a motion or something?
For a motion, yes.
I don't know how to put all that.
What she said.
Listen to the tape.
I'll second what she said.
Any further discussion? All right. In favor? Aye. Very good. All right. Next is adoption of core network agreement with the broadband authority. Mr. Lachlan, are you doing this, sir?
Yes, I am. I guess I was supposed to be Mr. Lansing, but he is at another meeting tonight. This is, I think the broadband authority has already adopted this. This is just a companion adoption of dealing with the assets that were previously paid, I guess, by the county that we're now.
Well, this reminds me of the situation a few years ago, and it depends on what the word is. This was a case where the assets were transferred, assigned, moved, allocated, whatever verb you want to pick to the broadband authority, but it didn't say clearly enough that the broadband authority now has title to those assets. And that's what this
point is
is.
to clarify the previous expenditure.
Okay. Any questions? Entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. I see no old business or Department Director Constitutional Officer reports. County Attorney's report. Mr. Latchman.
Mr. Chairman, there's an item before you concerning animals, changing our animals at large ordinance, but I believe there's going to be a motion to defer that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we defer this item to a later date, and I have a couple of comments after that.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Second.
All in,
Discussion and
discussion?
Discussion.
I'd like to recommend that we have some additional conversations, discussions with the enforcement side of this, the sheriff's offices and so forth, as well as some of the farming community to, in essence, lay out a better pathway, better articulated pathway of progression from sort of the no-fault acts of nature kind of situation where animals escape to the non-responsive, almost belligerent level. We need to refine that a little bit better so that we know, so we can offer to all those involved better guidance.
And I can say when we originally drafted this up, that was what the sheriff was getting frustrated with the way the current ordinance is being interpreted. You have to give warning after warning after warning, and the judges won't enforce it. So the sheriff's department's trying to find some sort of an enforcement ground where the frequent flyers.
Well, let me just say that if Joe Jones has cows and they get out in Route 20 and he's not doing anything about it, they go out and warn him and he still doesn't do anything about it. So they go out and write him up. If the judge doesn't enforce that, it seems to me that's the judge's problem. I don't know how we can fix that.
Well,
Wait a minute, I'm just getting ahead of steam up here.
Oh.
If alternatively, you know, 2 or 3 of Joe Jones's cows get out, and then 2 weeks later, 2 or 3 more get out. And a deputy goes out and says, well, your cows are getting out because your fence is loud. And then they get out a time or 2 more, and they write him up for that. And they go into court, and the judge didn't do anything about it. You know, second verse same as the first. I mean, that's the judge's problem. I don't know how Orange County can stop that. Both of those are common sense situations. And the way our ordinance currently reads is you get a warning, and then you can be written a ticket. I mean, why don't the judge?
Well, according to Michael Cass, the way the judge is interpreting the current ordinance is every single time the cows are out, you gotta get a warning and give them a reasonable time to get them off the road. And then the question is, did you give them a reasonable time? And so the way the judge is interpreting it's an every incident warning.
Each incident is a whole new case.
There's no progression is the
Right.
problem.
No progression. The judge is treating, saying the way the ordinance is written, which it's pretty much from state code, but the way the judge is interpreting it.
Thank you. I think that's
Is
I
the
think that's a
county
good point
ordinance,
there.
is it defined as fenced in or fenced out? Because to me,
We're
it reads like
fenced
it's fenced in, but it's not clearly stated that that's what it is. Is that an issue with the judge?
Well, this is not a
clearly
fence in,
defined
fence out
whether it's fenced
issue.
in.
This is an animals at large, which is like a separate state code section. So we're allowed to, animals running at large on the public highways are different from a fence in, fence out issue. Fence in, fence out does with neighbors, cows getting on the neighbor's property.
There's something about this that doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, we've got a junk car ordinance that says you can't have more than 5 junk cars. All right, if somebody's got 6 junk cars and we go out and we say, you gotta get rid of that, so they haul 2 of them out, and the next day they bring 2 back in, and then they go back in there and tell them again, the judge is not gonna treat that as a new offense, is he?
Would think. And like I said, I haven't had the judge do this to me. It was Michael Cass who called me and said, look, the judge wants something clearer that it's an escalating situation. So, and that's what I think what Supervisor White is saying, we really probably need to sit down with Mike and maybe even the judge.
Well, I don't know how you get, well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it'd be a great idea to take care of that, Jim. Because I don't see how you get there, I mean, I really don't. I mean, it's common sense, and I don't understand the judge. I mean, if it happens over and over again, clearly there's a problem.
I don't disagree with you.
Right, yeah, and I think that my recommendation to at least trying to see if we can build in the language of the ordinance that progression and the increasing, and I'm not talking about 15 occurrences, I'm talking about, like the 3rd or somewhere along in there, that puts us in a better position.
Well, and we need safeguards against it, but, if a tree takes down a fence or if a car takes out.
The no-fault stuff is very different from the progressing to sort of the habitual offender kind of situation.
And in fact, warnings are issued, that becomes a record available to the judge.
And that may have to be part of this, and I mean, I don't have the answer, I just think we need to see if we can work to an answer.
So is there a second to Mr. White's?
Oh, we're discussing.
You want to make a comment?
Okay.
In section B,
Oh, okay.
in section B, it reads to permit animals to run at large. Would it not be maybe better to willfully permit animals to run at large?
We could have that language.
I just think it needs some work, that's really my.
Well, it definitely needs work.
See, the way the judge is reading it now is he's going after has been notified by an officer, he's going to the officer's spot every time and notifying and give him a reasonable time to get the cows off the road and basically it makes it.
If he doesn't get them off the road, then the judge will act.
Right, if he doesn't get off the road by, exactly.
It's called a question.
All right.
Well, if they don't get them off the road, maybe that's reason enough to confiscate the animals.
They've actually done that.
Well, that was actually my advice in a couple of cases, as far as I'm concerned, those are abandoned. That won't come get his cows.
Aye. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. County Administrator, do you have anything, sir?
Just noting that I wore my orange tie tonight to signify that I'm now an Orange County taxpayer, so.
Excellent. All right. Have you paid your tax bill yet?
You have an address yet? We're gonna do a reassessment here.
All right, very good. Well, welcome, sir. Thank you.
Yes, welcome to Orange County.
Yes. Informational items.
No board comment tonight?
I'm sorry, yes, I was getting a comment from the county administrator. Board comment, Mr. Frank.
I did have one, came up at the NK meeting yesterday that the limit on FHA and VA loans is something like about $470,000 or something like that. And in adjacent counties, Spotsy and Culpeper, they're up around 700,000, which poses a limit, and that thing is being re-examined as a result of the census. I've asked Kenny, he's got somebody looking into that, asked him to give us the information as to how that process works. But that gets evaluated by Congress, and they set that, and it's for the whole county. And, and so wanted for an opportunity for us to be able to engage on that and maybe get that number raised.
Mr. Johnson.
To me, it's ridiculous that they set a different amount for each county. I mean, it should be a percentage of appraisal that they're willing to go to. And it doesn't matter what county it's in.
Completely agree.
Well, we
No,
can change the entire law, but I thought maybe we'd just work on this little piece.
Well, no, I'm with you, but
Yes. You happen to hit a nerve, Mr. Johnson.
yeah, I'm very nervous this evening.
Yes. Mr. White.
Yes, I have one comment. Last Friday, Supervisor Marshall and I attended a meeting sponsored by the Farm Bureau. The subject was solar generating facilities. And it was actually fairly well attended. A lot of landowners, farmers were there. One thing that was clear from the discussion, this is a far more complex issue and decisions that need to be made than one might think. And a lot of really good conversation. And so I just want to recommend that we continue informing ourselves about this topic and understanding what's been tried in other places, in some cases successfully, in apparently quite a few cases not very successfully. We have to realize that this is a developing industry. I think I used the term at one point of churn, that one of the problems is that the landowner, the farmer, has no idea of who he's going to be dealing with a week from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. It gets passed around to lots of different entities. And that just adds complexity and confusion and probably risk to the deal. So it was informative, but it also tells me that we better keep working away at this, trying to better understand it and find where we want to be as Orange County in this process. I don't have an answer to offer to you at this point, but it's very, very involved and complicated, and in some cases, a lot of unknowns.
I concur. I saw something today that related to the cost of solar power because it was like 4 times more than what they had expected because of the disposal of the panels. So there's a lot of unknowns, you're right. But on a lighter note, I would like to report to the board about a great agro-tourism event we had over the weekend. The Orange County Fair put on their annual tractor pull. It was well attended. I think the numbers I saw was 3,500 people. And me and my family also attended. And surprised to find that there was a lot of people as far as away as an hour and a half that attended it. So it's becoming a big drawing card, and want to congratulate Willie Lohr and his team with the Orange County Fair for putting it on, and it's growing and something Orange needs to be proud of.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I just have one thing this evening. Last week, I had lunch down in the Locust Grove area, and I left the restaurant parking lot right after one of our medic units had turned down Route 611 off of Route 620. And about a mile and a half down, came upon them again. There was a vehicle head-on into a tree, fully involved in fire. There was a Orange County deputy, animal warden specifically, on the scene, and they had the patient out working on them. And then VDOT crews were also on the scene. So see what's happening, and we had assistance from Spotsylvania County Fire and Rescue. Their engine 7 was the only fire apparatus on the scene at the time. Squad 29 got there later. But as I got the backstory, there were 2 vehicles apparently racing, and one went to pass the other one, and they made contact. The one vehicle hit the tree head on, and the other vehicle went probably another 700-800 feet through a field, through a fence row into another field, and was upside down. Well, come to find out, Deputy Brian McFarland just happened on the accident right after it happened. And he saw the car that had overturned in the field, stopped to render assistance, and was trying to get the female occupant out. Was having difficulty. She finally ended up getting out. And while he was doing this, people started yelling at him that there was a second vehicle, which he could not see from his vantage point. So he drove down to the second vehicle where a fire had started at it, and he stopped and did pretty much what you would expect any first responder to do. He took out a fire extinguisher and tried to put out the fire, and didn't happen. He actually carries a closed bucket of water to give to animals when he goes on call. So he threw the water on there and got the fire down substantially. At this point, he went over to render aid to the young lady that was in the car, which was impossible to do. She was entrapped in the car. The front hinges on the door were broken. It would not move. And something that we'll have a presentation in the future, but due to social media, I wanted to make sure I brought it up tonight because I have already seen where isn't the board going to do something? He then took and rummaged through his vehicle to find out anything that he had so he could get the young lady out. Ended up taking a tow strap, hooking it around the door, used his vehicle to try to pull it loose, and it wouldn't happen. So he loosened it, cut the strap, retied it in a different location, and then pulled the door off, at which time 2 VDOT workers, 2 brothers, Monaco and Clico Ratcliffe, were on the scene with many other VDOT workers. And they went to the vehicle, which was at this point fully involved, pulled the young lady out so that she could have aid rendered to her. She had severe injuries to her legs as well as second-degree burns on a lot of her body. The other young lady is in good shape. She had a minor concussion. This one has extensive rehab, but is going to be okay. And through the whole thing, Officer McFarland went above and beyond anything that would be expected and was very calm and methodical in his efforts to get this young lady out, as well as assist the other. And for the families, this was more of a tragedy than most accidents because 2 girls apparently were cousins. So I just wanted to make sure we will have a presentation in the future. but everybody on the scene performed admirably. But Deputy McFarland went way, way above and beyond anything that would be expected.
Great.
All right.
That story ought to show up in the Ames County Review exactly as you told it.
Well, I believe that it is actually, the sheriff has already written up a very good narrative, as well as I contacted Alan Saunders that day with VDOT to tell him what his employees had done, and they will be here to accept. And then at the same time, I contacted Chief Cullinane from Spotsylvania County to express my appreciation for the quick response from their fire and rescue service.
Citizens need to see what their public servants are doing to take care of them.
Absolutely. Okay, any appointments to boards, commissions, or committees? There are none. Calendar items, let's see, we have we don't have anything at this point we need to add, do we, Allison?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We will move on from the calendar. A quick question on our public hearing. Do we have anyone here to speak? Signed up to speak? I know we have some letters.
We do, we have one person here to speak for the public hearing and several signed up for public comment as
Okay,
well.
well, we'll go ahead and do the public hearing next then. Mr. Lechny, are you the one presenting this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. What you have for your public hearing this evening is an addition to our trash and debris ordinance, adding a dumping trash or garbage on the highway provision, which we actually didn't have. The main issue is subsection C, which makes it a misdemeanor, which could come up to 12 months in prison, a minimum of $1,000 fine, up to $2,500. Or the judge can actually order them to do community service. So this is lifted pretty much out of state code. Funny thing is, after the article that appeared in the Orange Review, I actually got a call from a couple of county attorneys in other counties who are struggling with this. They wanted to brainstorm. One of the things that I was informed of, which I thought was pretty interesting, I thought I was going to throw out tonight, is Page County actually is setting up cameras in some of the bigger trash areas. Because if you notice in subsection B, and again, this is out of state law, if trash flies out of a vehicle and we get the license plate, it is a legal presumption that the owner of that vehicle dumped that trash, and they got to prove they didn't, which, how do you prove you didn't do something? And so Page County is going with cameras. I understand they just started, so I wasn't able to get any kind of input as to the success of that. But like I said, this is a statewide problem. I got calls from a couple of county attorneys and a couple of emails saying, hey, we're struggling with the same thing. You know, if y'all come up with any solutions, let us know. This is what we're doing.
I would be reluctant to go the camera route at the present time. I'd like somebody else to be the guinea pig, because I know a number of jurisdictions have put traffic cams in, and there's been battles back and forth. I'd rather somebody else do the battling.
Well, I'll stay on and see how it's going for Page. I'll let you know in a while.
Thank you. Any other questions for county attorney?
Yeah, I have maybe a comment. Realistically, I don't think they're gonna put anybody in jail for 12 months. But I think perhaps maybe it should read not less than 1 day.
Well,
Well, we can't force a judge to put anybody in jail.
exactly.
So I have seen it only once, but if it was so egregious where somebody literally dumped their trash into the road that a judge did, I think in 2 days or 3 days or something like that, but.
I think I would give it more teeth, but like you said, maybe you can't.
Well, the not exceeding 12 months is state law, but there's nothing that gives us the power to force the judge to give him jail time.
But you can force the judge as far as the amount.
Well, we could say minimum of 1,000, not less than 1,000, if his hands are tied on that, he has to follow. The other thing that is in there is the court may order the defendant to do community service and put them along the side of the road cleaning up trash, which may be a more effective deterrent than anything else. Is the is to have a few people that have to spend 10, 12 hours on the side of our highways cleaning up our trash.
I believe this would absolutely be a step in the right direction. All right, anything else for the county attorney? Right, we'll open the public hearing. Do you have any speakers?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Aside from the written public comments that have already been provided to you ahead of the noon deadline, we do have Kathy Thorpe here to speak. And she resides at 22140 Monrovia Road.
Good evening, Mrs. Thorpe.
Well, good evening.
If you would state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Kathy Thorpe at 22140 Monrovia Road, Orange, Virginia. And good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I saw the little letter in the paper about this, and it had been something that had bothered me for a really long time, so I just thought I'd come tonight and let you know how I felt about it. I think that there's a lot of people would say we don't have a litter problem, because I think it's really easy to overlook if you're the driver and you're going down the road and you're supposed to be paying attention to what you're doing. But I started to notice it a few years ago, and I kind of thought we got over this in the 70s, because I'm a child of the 60s, and we went through all that ecology and we're going to clean everything up, and we did. But I think we've gone backward in this regard. And I was disappointed when I noticed how much litter is on the side of the road. So I pick up my trash 2 to 4 times a year on my road frontage. I have about 6/10 of a mile, and I do mine and my neighbors on the other side because they're a little bit older and they don't need to be out there. And I get between 7 and 8 garbage bags full each time I pick them up. Interestingly and shockingly, 75% of it is alcohol related, which makes me really scared while I'm out there picking it up. I mean, the hard stuff, then all of it's there. The rest of it is smoking, fast food, and just people's bags of household trash and car parts. So I just want to say that I think trash begets trash. People see it, they say, I'm just gonna throw mine out the window. I get a lot of trash on my road frontage I can see, but around the corner where there's nobody, it's just really kind of horrific. So I feel really blessed to be living in a beautiful place like this. Maybe everybody doesn't agree with me, but I think we should keep it as beautiful as possible. And I think that we should do what we can to present a good image to people that are traveling through and people that live here. So I would just like to ask that you guys do whatever you can for us in that regard, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I know that we had a number of public comments written in. I believe all of them were very similar to Ms. Thorpe's.
Supportive of the ordinance.
Yes, supportive of the ordinance. So we will dispense the reading of them, but we all had positive feedback on it. Close the public hearing.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. The one thing I would like to say is a lot of people have been following this. I've talked to people in other jurisdictions that are very happy that we're doing this, and they wish that their jurisdictions would do it. Does this need to be a roll call?
We need a roll call, yes, sir, to board this.
Yep.
Mr. Frame?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Crozier?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
And Mr. White?
Aye.
5-0.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Next, we have public comment. How many people do you have signed up for that?
Mr. Chairman, I currently have 3 people signed up for public comment.
Okay. Just to real quickly go over the rules for that. We typically have a 2-minute time limit per speaker. Since we only have 3, we'll go with a 3-minute time limit, give them a little more time to cover their issues. If you go ahead and call the first one.
Sure. First speaker is Jae-Soon Bae.
Good evening. My name.
And just real quick, yes, if you give your name and your address real quick.
Good evening. My name is Ji-sun Bae. I'm originally from South Korea, and I'm now an American citizen living in Fairfax County. For cultural reasons, Chinese people believe that a person's body should remain intact after death. As a result, people in China do not want to donate their organs. Yet suddenly, in the early 2000s, Chinese hospitals began advertising short wait times for vital organs. Where did all these human organs come from? Extensive and credible reports have revealed that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, has been killing prisoners of conscience, most of them Falun Gong practitioners, in order to sell their organs. A prominent international human rights organization recently stated, forced organ harvesting has been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale, and Falun Gong practitioners have been one and probably the main source of organ supply. You may find additional documentation in the handouts we provided. China has become a major international center for organ transplants, and many American patients travel there for this purpose. In fact, a Northern Virginia resident recently received an offer from China of a kidney transplant for $50,000. This issue should concern us here in Orange County because members of our community who need an organ might consider traveling to China for a transplant. Here in the US, the wait time for a matching kidney or liver can take several years, but in China, they can supply a match in a matter of weeks. Can you imagine finding out after the fact that your new organ was taken from a person who had been imprisoned for his religious beliefs and then executed so the CCP could sell you his organ? Please consider passing a resolution alerting our residents and our medical professionals about this issue so they may make an informed decision before traveling to China for an organ transplant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Tiny Tang.
Good evening. My name is Tiny Tang. I'm originally from China, and I'm now a US citizen. I live in Fairfax County. I would like to offer additional comments on forced organ harvesting in China. Falun Gong is a spiritual practice involving gentle exercises, meditation, and the virtues of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. It was introduced to the public in 1992 and quickly gained popularity because of its many health and wellness benefits. By 1999, 100 million people were practicing in China alone. Because of Falun Gong's immense popularity and its emphasis on spirituality, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, considered it a threat. As a result, the CCP launched the persecution of Falun Gong in July 1999. Countless Falun Gong practitioners have been tortured, killed, and disappeared to this day. Shortly after the persecution began, the numbers of organs available for transplant suddenly increased in China. Two ladies besides me are survivors of this persecution. Shen Shumei lived in Kapagu County. Chun Yingwan spent 7 years in prison for telling people about Falun Gong. Over 20 of her friends were tortured to death. The policeman in China killed her husband for protecting her. During her imprisonment, Mr. Wang was forced to do slave labor for up to 18 hours a day. One of the items she made was jacket. They are showing you here. She was also blood tested to determine the compatibility of her organs for the potassium transplant. If someone goes to China for the transplant, This could very possibly result in the death of an innocent Falun Gong practitioners. The issue of forced organ harvesting in China has been underreported in the US media. In response, a total of 14 counties in Virginia, including Spotsylvania, Louisiana, and Culpeper, recently passed a resolution to educate their residents about the practice. And today, I ask you to do the same. Please introduce and pass a resolution to raise awareness of this issue. We have submitted petitions from almost 150 local residents in support of this request. In fact, this is very urgent. A lady from Orange County who signed the petition told us she got her organ transplant from China. Your action will help prevent the citizens of Orange County from becoming the unwitting accomplices to the murder of innocent people. It will also help educate our citizens that the Chinese people and the Chinese Communist Party are not one and the same. Please take action now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Debbie Curley.
Oh, sorry, I have the petition.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Curley, and I've been a resident of Orange County for 62 years. I recently signed a petition asking this board to warn residents about the practice of forced organ harvesting in communist China. This practice has been used against religious minorities and other prisoners of conscience in China for well over a decade. The wait time for a kidney transplant here in the US can range from 3 to 5 years, but in China, you can get a match in a matter of weeks, and you can even schedule a transplant in advance. The reason? Prisoners of conscience are being killed for their organs, and the Chinese government is selling them to international recipients for tens of thousands of dollars. I don't believe that there is a single person in Air County who would not support this resolution if they knew about the practice of forced organ harvesting in China. The problem is that many residents have never even heard of it. The Chinese communist regime spends millions of dollars trying to suppress any news story that portrays it in a negative light. And at the same time, they lobby US policymakers and their representatives in Washington so that they'll look the other way. Some will say that Congress should deal with this because it's an international issue, and they're right. This is an international matter, and the US Congress should address it. But our representatives often give priority to special interests and partisan infighting while ignoring matters of concern to their constituents. I don't have PAC money or a multi-million-dollar lobbying firm to get Congress's attention, but I do have my county board of supervisors, the level of government that's closest to the American people. I can speak out as an individual citizen, but I'm asking you, the Orange County Board of Supervisors, to join your voices with mine because our voices are louder together. A resolution will cost the taxpayers absolutely nothing. It will educate our citizens about an important issue and will tell the US Congress to stop its bickering and do something positive for our citizens and for our world, and to do it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else signed up else?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all for your public comment. Tom, could you please read for?
We don't have anything for.
Don't have it. Okay. All right. In that case, I'll be entertaining one more motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
We're ready to stop the live